The Cardinals have done it. It's March 13th, and they finally made a free agent signing. The St. Louis Cardinals offseason has finally begun, and there's only a few days left in it. Did the Cardinals win the offseason? No. Okay, we'll stop messing around. But we want to talk about the Phil Maton signing, which has been kind of in the cards for a long time here. What it means for the Cardinals bullpen, what it means for the regular season. Does it change our NL Central outlook? Probably not, but it is kind of fun to talk about something new on this episode of Dealing the Cards. Welcome back into an emergency podcast for Dealing the Cards. If you're a New York Mets fan, if you're a New York Yankees fan, you go on emergency pods when you sign Juan Soto or Max Fried. But here in Cardinal Nation right now, it's the Phil Maton signings that get the emergency pods. Sandy, Phil Maton is officially a St. Louis Cardinal. That was something that was rumored last offseason. And if you're first time tuning into our podcast, we go live twice a week. So Phil Maton is a name we've discussed before. We've lamented all offseason. The Cardinals have virtually done nothing. One of the few things they did do claim Bailey Horn. They've now traded him away for cash considerations in response to the Phil Maton move. But here's Phil Maton in the bullpen. There is ramifications we'll talk about the Cardinals roster with the Maton addition. But Sandy, I just want to hear your initial thoughts on the Cardinals adding Phil Maton in free agency today.
Yeah, I mean, can't complain. Very happy to see the Cardinals actually go out and spend some money in free agency. So obviously I'm happy to have that happen. It's nice that they are accomplishing one of the things that was on their wish list. I've criticized them for having a wish list and then not doing those things. So I still think they should have gone out and signed a Randall Grichuk. I still think they should have gone out and traded away one of their starters. But you know what? I'm not going to criticize this specific move. This is the first thing they've done this offseason on the player side that I've been happy about. So, a lot of good stuff on the personnel side, a lot of good stuff on the business side. But it's good to see the Cardinals finally check off one of their objectives on the baseball side of things. So it'll be nice to see this happening. I think it's a good move. I'm sure we'll break it down a little bit more, but it's good. I'm a reliever guy. Love glazing my middling relievers, and I'm sure Maton will be the next in a very long line of relievers that I've liked watching.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny because when the signing happened in our chat, you were like, "Oh, he's like a Chris Stratton. He could be even better." And like most people, when they hear Chris Stratton's name, are like, "Chris Stratton." Okay. But Sandy loves Chris Stratton.
Chris Stratton was great. So Chris Stratton with the Cardinals, 76 innings in a calendar year. That's fantastic. I love the volume he was bringing to the table. That's a 3.77 ERA with a 2.96 FIP. Let's not hate on Chris Stratton here.
I don't even disagree with you. It's just the intensity of your love for Chris Stratton that gets me.
I just wanted to know, I've been glazing relievers since at least 7th grade. I was a Mitchell Boggs super fan. Kevin Seagrass.
Okay, well, at least Kevin Seagrass had a sub-1 ERA 1 year. Mitchell Boggs was an elite setup man.
I was a Seth Manns reliever, Mark Sepchinski reliever, Tyler Lyons.
Yes. Those are a lot of great names there. Sam Freeman had a little spit in there.
I remember Sam Freeman was a believer.
Oh, yeah, Dulala. Yeah, there's a lot of guys up in there. Arthur Rhodes was like the elite left-handed specialist back in the day, but Phil Maton is here. I like it. I mean, it's a $2 million move, so I'm not gonna act like the Cardinals I keep joking. Yeah. Did they win the offseason? Obviously, this doesn't really move the needle in terms of how we feel about their offseason, but it's like the Nick Anderson thing, but a little bit even higher upside. And I guess there's a little bit more to lose, but it's money and it's $2 million. From a observer perspective, that doesn't hurt anyone other than the Cardinals pocketbooks. And again, it's $2 million. So they're fine. They were able to flip Bailey Horn for cash considerations. That could be $100,000, could be $1 million. I don't know. That kind of negates the cost a little bit. Again, they got him for free off waivers. So, and that's even a move where I joked and I deleted it because I thought people were gonna get upset about it in the wrong way. But I did the LeBron meme to them trading Bailey Horn for cash. But when you're going to DFA a guy and get rid of him, if you can get cash for him, it's better than nothing. That's something. So okay, sure. But then anyways, Phil Maton, he had a really, really great season for the Houston Astros back in 2023, 3.0 ERA and 68 appearances, up and down-ish career where he's had high 4s ERAs, and even a 6 ERA back in 2019. But once he got to Houston, it really seemed like things settled down for him. He struggled with the Rays to start 2024, but then when he was traded over to the Mets, he was a really helpful piece in their bullpen down the stretch, handled high-level innings. I think he had a sub-3 ERA for them. Again, he's been sitting in free agency until this point, which goes to show you no one was necessarily desperate to bring Phil Maton onto their team. but to fill a 6th, 7th inning role as a right-handed veteran reliever, I like it. And if the Cardinals are in a position to sell at the deadline, you never know if Maton could get you something in return. Like, I mean, who am I trying to not yet. Well, Yanis Cabrera got you Sammy Hernandez, and I feel like Phil Maton could get you.
He was a lottery.
He's pitching well.
Yeah, Hernandez was
so
also
like even
not a well-liked prospect before that trade.
Yeah, so I like when you're a team in this kind of position, you have roles to fill. Like when it comes to the rotation, there are plenty of arms right now that I think it does more harm than good not to see those arms in the rotation. But we know bullpens, you're going to funnel through arms all season long. Yep. So adding a veteran to that mix, I'm totally okay with. Again, if it doesn't work out, you DFA him. It's not the Greg Holland contract. It's definitely not a Brett Cecil or something like, or Andrew Miller. We signed him multiple years. It's a 1 year, $2 million deal. Low hanging fruit. Really, there's only upside here, and if it goes poorly, you get rid of him. I think he could be a helpful piece to the mix. It actually kind of lengthens the bullpen out for me at this point, because your top three, obviously, you're hoping right now is Helsley, Fernandez, and JoJo. You've got Liberatore and John Keenan in that mix as the other lefties. Now you've got Maton as the next righty behind Fernandez and Brian Helsley. And then I actually think it kind of tells you what they're probably going to do with the rest of the bullpen here. I think they're probably going to put Nick Anderson on the roster. I can see them doing a 60-day IL stint for Zach Thompson to free a 40-man spot to make that happen, so they don't have to DFA anyone. If they aren't ready to do that, Thompson, I don't know if Anderson can make the roster, but he does have a clause in his contract that if they don't give him a major league role and another team offers him it, that he can leave. So I'm guessing they'll probably want to try and keep him around at least to start the season. And then like that is perfect 8th man role for Kyle Leahy. I think he could do more than that this year, but to make the roster as that guy that can give you 2 or 3 innings when you're down by a few runs or keep you in a game or whatever, I think Leahy or Roy Croft fits that role. Riley O'Brien probably goes down to AAA. We heard from Mosaic today that Goran Graceffo, well, first of all, Liberatore is going to be a reliever for sure, so he's not making the rotation, but apparently he can make the rotation later, so we're doing that song and dance again, which is super annoying. And then, I mean, if they put him in the rotation right now, I wouldn't complain. It's the fact that they're doing the whole, let's make him a reliever, but maybe a starter later again. Okay, whatever. But then he wasn't willing to confirm anything on Goran Graceffo, and then hours later, they optioned him to Memphis. So, but he did say if they did do that, he would be a starter. So Goran Graceffo is going to be stretched out. So now in AAA, if any injuries happen, the Cardinals will have Michael McGreevy, Quinn Matthews, and Goran Graceffo stretching out and ready to go. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of implications, I think, from Maton signing today, but also some of the other tidbits in there. How do you feel about how the Cardinals bullpen shaping out, Sandy?
Yeah, I mean, I am a little disappointed that Nick Anderson's going to make the roster. I'm sorry, but I'll just say it. I'm not super excited about that. I know
that's just my prediction. I don't know for sure he would, but
I think you're right, though. I do think you're right. I think he's going to make the roster, and I know spring stats don't really matter, but like he's not looked good this spring. He's had a couple blow-ups that have just been not super encouraging. And the thing is, this is coming against, low-level competition. And it needs to be said that early in the season, pitchers generally possess an advantage over hitters. They're still getting their timing down. Hitting's a rhythmic thing. It's something you get into over the course of a long season. That's why you got a lot of guys like Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenados that tend to heat up over the second half of the season. And so, Nick Anderson struggling against these guys in March, it doesn't have me super excited. But whatever the case, not thrilled about that. I do like what Maton brings to the table, though. I like what you're talking about with the Cardinals now having more depth on the right side, because that does matter. The bullpen felt pretty lefty heavy coming into this week. We talked about when we were projecting our final roster, we're talking about potentially including 3 or 4 lefties in the bullpen. That just probably wasn't going to work. 2 to 3 is a much better number for them. And John King and Liberatore are definitely going to get spots in the pen. So you're going to have to figure something out on the right side. They could have definitely done worse than Maton. There were guys out there that were less exciting. And again, there's a lot to like about Maton. You mentioned he really caught on strong with the Mets last year. And that's absolutely true. So post deadline last year, Maton appeared in 31 games for the Mets, pitched 28.2 innings. So 28 and 2/3. 159 ERA plus in that stretch, 257 FIP, 251 ERA, so right in line there. The big thing was that he just cut down on his walk rate. He had a career high 4.6 walks per 9, so walking a batter roughly every 2 innings with Tampa Bay. That's not acceptable. But when he got over to New York, slashed that rate more than half that rate. So now we're down to 1.9 per 9, and his strikeout rate jumped from 7.6 per 9 to 9.4 per 9. I don't have the K and walk percentage because I'm on Baseball Reference here. But, I'm sure those would tell a similar story of Maton was struggling to strike batters out, walking guys at a high rate, came to New York, tightened some things up, and both those rate stats improved significantly. And it led to a decrease in his whip, really. And this is the big thing for him. It led to a decrease from 1.3, so he was allowing 1.3 base runners per inning pitched, all the way down to 0.837. Now, do I think he's going to be that high leverage arm in New York? No, I don't. That was a little out of line for his career. That is the best stretch of his career by almost any measure. He was fantastic with them. But I think if you get someone that's similar enough to that player, this is a guy that can fill out a serious role for you. I don't see him as a replacement for Andrew Kittredge last year. Kittredge was fantastic. Yep. I don't think people should be thinking he's the high leverage arm to replace Kittredge. The Cardinals didn't go out and get that guy. They're hoping they can find him internally. They're hoping maybe Libby steps into that 8th inning role. They're hoping Fernandez takes another step forward or that Romero bounces back. But yeah, he could profile to be something like Chris Stratton was with the Cardinals. And if he puts up Chris Stratton numbers, which is a sub-4 ERA, a FIP that hangs right around that range, although Stratton's was even better, manages to strike a few guys out, induces some ground balls, that's fantastic. That's a nice surplus move from the Cardinals. It's a move on the fringe of your roster, but it is a good move. I also, one more thing, just want to react to something you said about potentially selling at the deadline. Yes, this is exactly the type of move a team like the Cardinals, who may be in contention, may not be in contention by the time the deadline rolls around. If you're not in contention, Phil Maton is either having a really good season, in which case you sell him because there's no reason to keep him around, and teams are going to be interested in a guy with an ERA right around 3.5. Like, they'd love that. That's super valuable for a bullpen as you're trying to make a stretch run. Or he's having a really bad season, and in that case, you cut him and you give more opportunities to a Riley O'Brien. Or even like an Adnier Mosqueda, one of these guys, Matt Savanson, maybe probably not Zach Showalter yet, but some of these guys, some of these high octane arms in your system who then get a chance late in the season. So it's a really good move. This is probably as happy as I've been with the Cardinals this offseason. I think it's a smart baseball move, and it's not something I've been able to say a lot lately. So got to be happy about this one.
Yeah, it's frustrating because in a normal offseason, you should be able to celebrate the Phil Matons and the Nick Anderson type moves Absolutely. Of the world as like, oh, these are good, shrewd moves around the edges to complete a bigger offseason plan where you went out and got that frontline starter, or you went and got that big bat you needed or whatever it is. And instead we're like, it's weird because we're really excited. I mean, this is the only move they've made. It feels very like dull because of it. And it is when you say, what's the one thing you did this offseason? It's like, oh, we got Phil Maton. But in a vacuum, we're just looking at this move specifically. Correct. You like the move. There's nothing really to complain about with it immediately. And it's kind of frustrating that all offseason people complained that the Cardinals haven't done anything. And some of that, and I think a lot of like us specifically have talked more about how they haven't traded away people, which has been a big problem. But then there's people that like have complained that they haven't signed a free agent all offseason who are now complaining that they're blocking a young arm with this. And I just disagree with that. And this is from the person who's been complaining about blocking arms in the rotation. I don't think you're doing that the bullpen move like this at all. Again, you're gonna be cycling through these guys throughout the year. And if Maton doesn't work out, then he doesn't work out, and they have no reason to keep him around. And if he does work out, then you want that kind of reliever in your bullpen, whether you're a contender or not. If you're not a contender, like you said, trade value. If you are a contender, that's helpful to have in your bullpen, another reliable righty. So I think we can get to some of these. Like Jeff has a question about Mason Winn, and there's some other roster construction stuff I think we can talk about even aside from the bullpen that I'd like to get to in a minute. One comp I kind of want to think or just say out loud, I think, for Phil Maton is he almost feels like what they hoped Drew Verhagen would have been in the bullpen, where he's a guy who induces a lot of ground balls. Last year's 88th percentile ground ball percent, or hard hit percentage, and 75th percentile ground ball percentage. Does a lot of barrels. He has an above average chase and whiff weight, but his K percentage did fall off a little bit here last year. But he is like a guy that doesn't allow hard contact. So it's almost kind of like a John King of the right side, but a little bit more swing and miss than John King has. But John King's like an elite ground ball guy. So again, like it. Again, I'm not going to overshoot it here as like something crazy, crazy big move here. But again, he's should be an above average reliever to add to a bullpen mix that I think could be a pretty strong bullpen this year. And for it to be so, it's either going to have to cycle through guys more than they did last year. They can't rely on the big three, big four like they did last year. Fernandez and Jocho really got puffed out down the stretch, and part of that's probably usage. They don't have Kittredge, like you said, so you're really down to 3 rather than that 4. Yeah, so I like the depth that they added here. So before we continue, we can talk more Phil Maton, but also I think there's some stuff, whether it's center field, Michael Ciani, Mason Winn leadoff stuff, Gordon Graceffo and Libby, all the stuff being utilized here. I want to thank a couple sponsors of the podcast. And first, I want to thank 314 Sports Cards and Collectibles. They're the presenting sponsor of the Deal on the Cards podcast. They're located at 9640 Olive Boulevard in Olivet, open 10 to 5 Monday through Friday and 10 to 4 on Saturdays and Sundays. They buy, sell, and trade all sports cards and Pokemon cards and have the newest selections of packs, boxes, and single cards of local players and stars from around the league. You got to check them out. I also want to talk to you about one of our new partners of the podcast, Underdog Fantasy Sports. Oh, here we go. The Deal on the Cards podcast is proud to be partnered with Underdog Sports, our favorite place to play fantasy games. You're now eligible to play in Illinois, Missouri, Indiana, and 37 other U.S. states. You got to check out Pick'em. It's so easy to play. You just pick 2 to 8 stats of your favorite players and choose whether they'll go higher or lower. You can win 20 times your money by going 5 for 5. If that sounds like fun, sign up with our promo code CARDS to claim your first free pick plus first-time deposit offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash. We can't wait to see your entries. Thanks, Underdog Fantasy, as always. And remember, you can use our promo code CARDS with the link in our description of the YouTube video for our first free pick 'em plus a first-time deposit offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash. There's spring training games you can play with now. Obviously, the regular season's right around the corner as well. College basketball, March Madness, all that stuff happening. NBA, all of it. So here's one thing I want to say, Sandy. This is the first time I felt all offseason that Michael Ciani isn't going to make the opening day roster. I actually think he's not. I think Victor Scott might be the guy right now. I would probably go with Lars Nootbaar in center field and maybe even Matt Koperniak off the bench and let Ciani or let Scott develop in AAA. And I don't really care what you do with Ciani at that point. But Ciani's just been so bad offensively at this point that I don't take a lot into spring training stats. But again, like we already knew who's a fringe guy that was fighting for a spot. And when you're doing this poorly, and you're not a guy that at least a Gorm, you know what the upside could be. So even when he's struggling, you're like, okay, like we'll see what happens the regular season. I don't really know seeing what happens the regular season Michael Ciani's bat's going to do for you. It seems like Victor Scott's kind of caught some more eyes than what he had before. Again, I do think I would probably have him in AAA to make sure he's developing a little bit more. But again, what I'm predicting, what I think is going to happen is Scott's going to be open to center fielder again this year. Ciani's not going to make the roster. Are you convinced that the Cardinals might not go the Ciani route, or do you think they're still going to end up running out Ciani on opening day?
I want to ask what's made you feel this way. Is it just him going, 0 for 2 with a walk again today? Or, because it's true. Spring, I love to tell people spring stats are irrelevant, but it's hard to look at Ciani's 0.33 batting average, his 180 OPS. That's hilarious because you got guys that run out a 180 OPS plus, which if someone's OPS plus mark is higher than Ciani's OPS, that is a really bad sign. And the sample for him is actually it's not a big sample by any means, but it's bigger than the sample for some other guys, right? He's gotten a lot of at-bats this spring. I would wager he's pretty close to the team lead in it. AB's received this spring. Maybe not right up there with the top, but I bet he's top.
He's
top
definitely
5.
close, if not the top.
I bet he's top 5. It feels like he's playing every game. The Cardinals have given him an extended run. I do think at this point they're shuffling him out there saying, please, just get that number into the triple digits and let us feel decent about this. Because it seems like the Cardinals want him to be the guy this year. I really don't know why. But it feels that maybe they're worried about potentially a Victor Scott situation, or they're more concerned about Lars Nootbaar's injury possibility than we are. But I'm with you. I think that in my perfect world, it's Nootbaar. Just makes the most sense. It lets you get Donovan into an everyday role in the outfield. It doesn't jeopardize Jordan Walker's playing time. And it makes Thomas Saggese the first guy up if there's an injury. All of those are really good things. It probably gives you even more opportunity for a guy like Herrera potentially to DH on days where Pais. It just solves all your problems, because it gets a guy who legitimately is a 55 OPS plus hitter out of the lineup every day.
Yeah.
That's really good. That does a lot of good things for your offense when you don't have a black hole there. We don't let the pitchers hit in the National League anymore, but having Ciani back there is essentially like letting your pitcher hit. It is a free out a lot of the time. It's a rally killer. It can be really hard. Now, Ciani had some good stretches for the team last year. I don't want to discount his defense. I do think he's an incredible defender, and he's really fun to watch in the field. But by golly, he's terrible at the plate. So I'm with you in that sense. But I think you're also right that it might be Scott before it's Nootbaar. The Cardinals just don't seem to want to give Nootbaar the opportunity to play center, at least not right off the bat. Maybe he's the first guy up if there's an injury. or something like that. But I don't know. What exactly, if it's not is it the spring training numbers that has you thinking it might not be Siani, or is it something else?
It's a number of factors. Again, he's like, and it starts with he hasn't done anything to earn the role. And
Right.
he's tied for third in at bats behind Winn and Gorman. He's tied for Arenado and Burleson, which is it's just crazy. That's like the guy who's getting some of the most at bats on this team is Michael Siani. But I think part of it is because like you said, they're trying to give him the confidence. They're trying to let him see, can he figure this out? And he's not. And again, like, when you're hitting this poorly at the plate in 30 plate appearances, and again, this is what we or 30 at bats. I don't know what the plate appearances is. And we know that this has been like you last year, as in like one of the worst hitters in all baseball, Michael Siani. Like, it just reinforces that idea already. And then Victor Scott has done a lot again, but it's 25 plate appearances. So I'm not trying to sell you on Victor Scott as a breakout. I just think they might try the Scott thing and see what happens again. And a new bar would be, in my guess, is what would happen here is if Scott's on the opening day roster, new bar starts in left, but he's the backup center fielder. And then they probably have like Jose Barrero be the other center field option on the roster, so that there's a day they want Newton center and they want to give Scott a day off. It's Barrero out there rather than like Michael Siani off the bench. I actually don't think both Siani and Scott will make the roster. Even if Scott's the starter, because they need someone to be the backup shortstop. It seems like Luke and Baker is going to make the roster. Alec Burleson's a bench piece already. So if you do that, plus your catcher, you don't have a backup outfielder or a backup infielder on your bench right now, because they don't really want to play Burleson in the corners. Neither Baker can't play anything other than first base. And apparently Burleson's basically going to be first base only this year. I really think they're going to hold Baker's bat for the right-handed power off the bench. And so you're going to have to go with Hellman or Barrero as that guy off the bench. And so I think he'll kind of provide the extra versatility. They could play the corners, play center field if they need to, but Newt would be like the primary backup. So I do think Newt will play center field at the beginning of the year, but it won't be like an everyday center fielder. It'll be, hey, when they want to move Scott out of the lineup, when Scott wants a day off, maybe against left-handed pitching, they put Newt Bar in center, and then that allows them to do Baker at DH, put Gorman at second, Donnie in left field. So maybe something like that. But yeah, I do think it's a mix of performance. And also there's like, which I appreciate about the Cardinals beat reporters, because they're not going to sway you in a direction with their feelings. They're going to tell you what they think is actually happening, which is what their job is supposed to do, right? Like when people clown on Katie Woo or Derek Gould or Jeff Jones or whoever for telling us what they know, it's frustrating because it's like they're trying to tell you what they know. They're not like, they'll give you opinions here and there too, but they're not going to wishful thinking something into existence. They want you to know what the reality is. It feels like people are starting to back off Siani as the center fielder a little bit. You see some opening day roster predictions come out where he's not on the roster anymore. You're seeing more and more comments about how the battle really seems to be heating up a little bit. It does seem like Newt's the clear third guy, in my opinion, where it just seems like the catastrophe would have to happen, where they're like, we can't play Siani and Scott's not ready, so we go to Newt. But I do think Newt will be the backup. He'll be the primary left fielder, but he'll back up Scott in center with like a Barrero or Hellman off the bench. Probably Jose Barrero, which means they might DFA Hellman. I hope they DFA Fermin instead, because I like Hellman's versatility over Fermin's.
Absolutely.
But that's kind of where I'm at with that.
Yeah.
And I think
oh, you go.
I was just saying to the people who are like, why not Sajacy on the roster? There's no shot. Ever since Arenado's come back, there's no shot. Thomas Sajacy's going to be the opening day roster until they decide to trade Arenado, or until Nolan Gorman has played himself out of a job, which will be a long time. So, JC's not on the roster, or an injury happens.
Yeah, so Jay-Z profiles as a potential everyday player. You don't waste that guy on your bench right now. You know, you need to get him at bats, because when players sit and they grow stale, that's not what you want for a guy that you believe in as a potential big piece in this franchise moving forward. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I hate the idea that the Cardinals could go with Siani. It feels like a really safe option for them in a sense, because the defense is going to be good.
Yeah, but even then, it's like, how is it? I mean, like, I know what you're trying to say, but it's like from our side, it's like, how is it safe playing that bad of a bat in your lineup? It's not
so bad. I know. It just feels like the Cardinals could go with him, and the line could be like, Scott wasn't ready, and we need to keep Newt healthy. I really hope that if they do go with Siani, I hope there's a short leash, because I mean, there wasn't last year. But last year, I think what we're forgetting a little bit is like last year, Siani was probably the sixth option, because like it should have been Edman and he was hurt. And then it should have been Carlson and he was hurt. It should have been Newt Bar and he was hurt. It should have been Scott. He was unplayable. It should have been Tyler O'Neill, but they had to trade him because if all those things had happened first, they wouldn't have traded Tyler O'Neill. They would have let him try center field first. Finally, they get down to Siani 6th. That's how I saw it. So it's like, man, the thing is, like, they've had more time to plan now, you know, they had a lot more time to plan. And the fact that, like, last year, there was no reason to crucify the team for going with Siani because it was just the best they could do with all the things that had happened. At this point, like, come on, you know, honestly, that's not that crazy. I mean, Barrero at least was a real prospect at one point, right? Like,
I think Siani might have been a top 100 guy for a second at one point.
Wait, he was a top 100 prospect? The glove is good enough that I can see it.
He was a legit prospect for the Reds for like a half second at one point. But anyways, it doesn't matter. He's not anymore.
Yeah. I mean, Siani's what, like 27?
Something like that. Yeah.
Barrero's like 26.
First guy. Well, Barrero's very toolsy, right? Like, you can always dream on. He potentially could have some power in that bat. He could potentially do something. Again, we're not trying to tell you who he is, but
yeah, you know exactly who Siani is as a player, though, at this point. Like, you know, the bat's not there, and it's never going to be. It's not going to change. He never hit in the minors at basically any stop. And this is not me dunking on Michael Siani. I liked what he did for the team last year. But I just think that at this point, the Cardinals had months to figure it out, and you cannot run it back with the worst Cardinal hitter of the StatCast era. You just can't do it. Unfortunately, I think they're going to. I do think it'd be interesting to me if the leash is short and they give Nootbaar a chance to earn everyday center field duties. Like, maybe it looks like you give Nootbaar 2 to 3 games a week to start. Let him split time with whoever in center and then continue playing right at a potentially Gold Glove level because Nootbaar's a great right fielder. Although
who's in left then? Or what do you do, Jordan Walker?
Yeah,
are you assuming Jordan Walker's hurt? Now, here, I do think it's worth that was going to be the segue. Is I want to talk about the Walker conversation because we haven't seen him since he got hurt.
That's what I'm worried about.
Really short, and so I think there's a path. The only path, and maybe you have a different idea. I think the only path for Matt Koperniak on this roster. Well, there's two. One is if they commit to Lars Nootbaar in center and they say, screw it, we don't need defense off the bench, and Koperniak's the backup center fielder. I do not see that happening. But it'd be fun. Do not see it happening. The other route is Jordan Walker starts in the IL and Matt Koperniak gets his shot. And I think I think he could start, which is kind of weird that you could go from either not being on the roster to starting on the roster. But here's the kind of process back is we just talked about, like, let's say Scott Orsiani's the center fielder. Look at the bench. It's Burleson, who's already a left-handed option, and your lineup is already so left-handed heavy that you need a right-handed option off the bench. I like the potential of Barrero, but I don't think they're going to see him as our right-handed option off the bench, right? And your catcher Pages isn't that either. So Barrero or Hellman is your backup utility guy who's important because you'll have a Baker on the roster who will be that right-handed option. I don't think they'd go Koperniak over Baker because at that point, Koperniak's kind of redundancy with Burleson, Donovan, Nootbaar, all these left-handed bats, Gorman, but Baker provides a different look and a different strength. But if Jordan Walker's hurt, I think Koperniak could be a starting left fielder and Nootbaar starting right fielder, which is kind of weird to think about.
I think you're right, actually. And the other thing is, too, like, for anyone that says, well, Barrero may be over him, they're not going to give Barrero a starting. Like, they just can't. You know, I feel like it would look too bad to be like, hey, this minor league free agent who has had, like, an okay spring, but come on, like, does spring really matter? And has he, like, jumped off? You know, his numbers aren't really jumping off the page anyway. I think they're okay. But it's like, you can't let that guy start on opening day. You know, it's got to be like, hey,
OPS, but again, 22 at bats.
Yeah, you know, it's not like he's hit a bunch of tape measure home runs. You know what I mean? I've seen guys have much better springs and still not get a chance. So it's like, look at I feel like Moises Gomez had a really strong spring once, but maybe I'm making that up. But look at I don't know. It's just I feel like they can't do that.
Taylor
I feel
Motter.
like they have to say Koperniak's this prospect that we've had in the system. We really, really like him, and it was his turn. You know, we wanted to give him a shot. That would make way more sense to me than going with Barrero. But I just really hope that whatever they do, they are committed to at some point, like the leashes are short and they're committed to riding the hot hand at some point. Because it's like if Lars Nootbaar shows you can play defense in center field and he's still healthy on May 1st, he's got to be the guy. It just wouldn't make sense to me to go with anybody else. And again, we've been talking all offseason about how the Cardinals have 2 needs this year. Need number 1 is win games, and that's a need they've imposed upon themselves, but they want to win. The Cardinals have made it clear they want to win. They've made moves to avoid accomplishing the second goal that I'm about to say, which is find out what you have, right? Gain information. You need to gain information and you need to win games. Playing Lars Nootbaar in center field probably solves both of those. If Lars Nootbaar could be your center fielder of the future, and it's also your best lineup. But the Cardinals don't seem committed to learning valuable information, so maybe they won't do it. It's insane that they're going to go with. I feel like they are still going to go with Siani. I want you to be right though, but I don't know. Do you think Scott's ready? Like straight up, regardless what the Cardinals think. Do you think Scott could be the guy? And like, is he going to stick this time?
I don't know.
I don't
know, because it's hard. It's that's just hard for me to know. And so if they put him on the opening day roster, I'll get it. And I'm not necessarily gonna be like, yeah, I'll be like, good for him. Like I want that for Scott. I'm excited for him, and I'll be rooting for him and hope he earns it and runs with it. And I think he could, but I think if they had a better option, right? Again, I would rather go Newt right now. I'd rather just let Scott figure it out in AAA for a little longer, continue to refine his game. Make sure that the next time he's on the roster, he's going to stick on the roster, not do the up and down experience again. Because I mean, it could be like it could almost feel like last year where Jordan Walker came off a year where he started the year really slowly. I know he had the hit streak, but it just wasn't right. Went down for a little bit, came back up, had a good end to his season. Scott didn't have like a great end to his season like that did, but after he kind of figured things out in AAA, he came back up, he produced better. And then he starts on opening day roster again, like Walker did, and then struggles in April again, like Walker did, and then gets sent down again, like Walker did, and then stays down in the minor leagues for a long time and trying to figure out his confidence, like Walker. Like, it's a different situation because Jordan Walker is a top prospect in all of baseball. Scott's a guy where you don't need him to be a 110 OPS plus guy or WRC plus guy to be effective. Like, if he's a little bit below league average with that speed and that defense, that's okay, right? You don't need like where Walker, where if he's below league average, it's like, oh gosh, this guy's like a bust. He's not working out. Yeah. So the bar for what you need from Scott's bat is not the same. I just don't want to put him in a situation where we're looking at end of April and it's a 20 WRC plus. It's like, this dude just can't figure it out. I don't think it'd be that bad, but I also just, again, I think this also is about getting opportunities for Burleson, right? Or other guys like that, or getting Kaperniak on the roster. Like, you can't do that when you have Scott in center field or Michael Siani in center field right now. So I do think they'll run with Scott. Could be Siani. We'll see. But I think the other random conversation point from the chat that I do want to get to real quick is, because I think it's an interesting topic point. It's about Mason Winn, the leadoff spot. And I want to get your take first on how you feel about the Cardinals potentially opening the year again with Mason Winn at the leadoff spot versus putting Nootbaar or Donovan in that. Is that the right move for the team now and for the future to let Winn lead off, or would you go in a different direction?
I think I might go in a different direction. Actually, Kareem said this, and I think it's a really interesting point. I think I'm attributing this to him correctly, but I believe it's Kareem that said the Cardinals putting Mason Winn in the leadoff spot is less about baseball and more about marketing him as the next face of the franchise, which I think that's a really interesting point. Because if you've got this, I mean, Mason Winn is an electrifying player. I am a Mason Winn supporter. I love Mason Winn. He's a lot of fun to watch. He's one of the best defensive shortstops in baseball already. He's got the best arm of any infielder in the league. He is incredibly exciting in the field, and he had a great year at the plate last year. That shouldn't go overlooked. I think he exceeded expectations. I think he tapped into his power just a little bit. It was a lot of fun. At the same time, I don't think he is a leadoff hitter. I don't think Mason Winn, I don't think you get the best out of him in that spot, and I don't think your team gets the best out of its leadoff spot there. It's partly because I don't think Mason Winn has the on-base profile to be a leadoff hitter, and it's partly because you have other guys on this team like Donovan and Nootbaar that do. I know Nootbaar and Donovan both have a little more power than Winn, so it makes sense maybe hitting them 3 or like 5, but you want to get those guys more at bats. They're better hitters. Donovan, especially, I'd love to see in the leadoff spot this year. I think he is also an electrifying player, also a ton of fun to watch. And I think you might get something better out of Mason Winn lower down in the lineup. He's got some speed too, so maybe he can be a table setter for your leadoff guy coming back around. And again, when you have guys like Nootbaar and Donovan who can potentially run on base percentages up above 360, like, you need a guy in front of them to come around and score. And if you've got a Mason Winn, like, the ideal inning for the Cardinals, I think, headed into the 3rd or 4th this year is like Mason Winn leads off that inning and gets on base via a single or something like that, right? Like, he can beat out a lot of ground balls really fast. And then you have a guy in your 1 spot coming back around like Nootbaar or Donovan that can, bring him across. I think that's what they need to do. So I'd love to see him hit lower in the lineup, but it seems like they're committed to doing him, putting him in the leadoff spot. And Kareem said it's a marketing thing. He might be right.
Real quick before we got breaking news from Cody here that Maton adds actually 20 expected wins, so the
I
Cardinals
agree with
should
that.
be about 100 win team this year. So should be looking at 100 win team Cardinal win team here, but Cardinal win
80 of
team,
them come from
Cardinal
John
team.
Key.
80 come from John Kate. Everyone else is a 0.
Yeah.
So I've been thinking about this a lot. If you want to win right now, like if you want the best possible lineup, I think you do the double lefty off the top of Donovan Newbar.
Yeah.
If you're building for the future, I don't mind putting Mason Winn at leadoff again, because I do think that it potentially helps him develop. It puts him in, it gives him more at bats. It puts him in big spots more often, and he's got to kind of sink or swim and figure things out. Is that the best thing for the team right now? Probably not. I would say not. And could it hurt his development? Maybe. Is it partially a marketing thing? Probably. Definitely. But I think it actually probably has more to do with, hey, if we want this team to really be good in the future, you need Mason Winn to develop into a guy who could be a leadoff man. Like if Mason Winn's always like, if he's permanently like in his prime, he's an 8 or 9 hole hitter. That's not the best version of himself. It doesn't mean he can't be an impactful player, but I think they want to see him rise to the occasion and be able to lead off in that spot. So that's kind of where I think it starts to make more sense for me.
Does where you hit in the batting order affect your development that much, though? I mean, Matt Carpenter would tell you yes. Matt Carpenter would tell you, like, I only want to hit leadoff. It doesn't matter how much power I can hit for. But, like, does it change that much? I feel like he's still going to get meaningful at bats anywhere in the lineup. And the leadoff spot, like, if anything, he's coming up in the lower leverage situations more often because the better hitters are behind him and the worse hitters are in front of him. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. But I feel like it shouldn't affect that much. And if you're not going to get the best out of your lineup, like I would be happy to change it around. I do think you're right that the best version of Mason Winn is a leadoff hitter in the future. But like, I think he has to hone some stuff. I think, for example, he needs to get his on-base percentage up if he's going to be a good leadoff hitter. And maybe throwing him up there right now is not ideal. Also, like, there's probably less pressure lower in the lineup too. Like if you can let him settle in as a big league regular at the 8 spot this year, and say he gives you a, because what was he last year? Like 101 OPS plus 99 or something like that, right? Like say he gives you a 108, 110 this year in the 8 spot. That's incredible. And then next year you feel really good as your team starts to reopen its contention window of sticking him at the leadoff spot.
Yeah, part of it too, though, is like Mason. It's not like Winn was bad last year. He was a 94. Sorry. Looking for his WRC plus in the leadoff spot. It was a 93, so 7 points below league average. And I honestly, coming into the year, thought a 90 to 93 WRC plus for him on the season would have been good.
Correct.
Where I'm like, if he, but again, he was elite in the 8th hole spot, 198 WRC plus. That's kind of crazy. But I don't know how much that's like. Yeah, I don't know how much of that is
sequencing, luck. Sure.
For sure. Because that was 25 games batting 8th. So like I don't really know what to mean or what to totally take from that. But what I do think for Winn, to your point, it's like again, like once you get through the order a little bit, it's like whatever. Like you can have innings where it's 8-9-1, right? Where it's like it's not like you come up 1-2-3 every time. But I do think it does something for a guy's confidence when opening day you're the leadoff hitter, the starting shortstop of the St. Louis Cardinals, and every single day you show up to the park and you're playing, you're the leadoff hitter. Like I think that can do something for a guy's confidence. But yeah, like I am the guy. And so, I think if I remember right, Mason just came out and said that recently, where he acknowledged like, oh yeah, my numbers are actually better in the 8 hole, but like it just gives me a lot of confidence when I get to be that guy. I think Newbar would probably say the same thing. Actually, Newbar has said the same. He feels like he's a leadoff hitter's mentality. Donovan would probably say the same, but I think for like a Newbar, he's arguably their best leadoff option beside him and Donnie. But Newbar, I want him in other positions where it's going to force him to swing more. I mean, he's passive. Yeah, he's passive to a default. And when you put him in the leadoff spot, he's going to go to that mentality more often. I think he can be optimized as a 2-hole hitter. I think there's worlds he could be your 3-hole hitter this year, or 5-hole hitter for Lars Newbar. So again, I'm not married to this take, but I do think I've been thinking for a while, Donnie's the best leadoff hitter on this team. And I would go Donnie, Wilson, Newt, Nato, or Donnie, Newt, Wilson, Nato to start off your lineup and figure out the rest from there. But I see for the development and to see if it sparks something and win for the future. I see the argument from leading off. again, I don't know if that's what they'll do. Maybe like Cody said, maybe Ivan Herrera should lead off. I don't know. I mean, he's got a high batting average. So, and actually, I think he led the team in OBP or was second to Contreras.
He was awesome last year. He was fantastic.
So, I think go ahead.
You go.
Or I was saying, I've been writing about what I think the opening day lineup will look like at this point. Because I'll have predictions go out tomorrow. I think the opening day lineup against a righty is going to be Mason Winn, Lars Nootbaar, Wilson Contreras, Nato, Donovan, Herrera, Gorman, Walker, Scott. And against lefties, Winn, Nootbaar, Contreras, Arenado, Herrera, Baker, Donovan, Walker, Gorman. But I think if you're going to optimize this lineup and make it the best possible, I would probably go Donovan, Contreras, Newt, Nato, go down, or Donovan, Newt, Contreras, Nato, go the rest down. But
how high can you hit Mason Winn if he's not your leadoff hitter? I think is my next question here. Like, where can you justify? You could
like not well. Oh, you mean right today?
Yeah,
today 7. Like that's maybe the highest, probably 8 or 9. I think as a profile of the hitter you want him to be, you could see him in the 1 or 2 hole. But like,
I was gonna say because I feel like you could get away hitting him 7th, maybe 6th, probably not this year. But like, I think if they're because I do hear what you're saying about like getting him just the feel. And I do love like symbolically, I love the idea of Mason Winn taking the first at bat for the Cardinals this year. Like, I think that just feels right. He's probably the face of the next team, at least unless Jordan Walker busts out this year or, totally. Yeah. JJ Weatherholt's going to be great too. Or like Quinn Matthews, but like right now, Mason Winn's the face of your future. And it is kind of fun to be like, oh, the next big thing is the first, getting the first plate appearance of the year. With everyone looking at him, like that's really exciting. But I think you're right. Like you're not maximizing things if that's happening. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't hate seeing him 7th actually. I don't know.
Yeah.
It is tough though, because you also want to get him a lot of at bats and like get him the most at bats by letting him bat first. I think it'd be kind of fun to let him hit leadoff for a little bit. If it goes sour, have kind of a shorter leash and say, we're going to stick you in the 7 or the 8 for now. And then give him the opportunity to earn that opportunity back. I don't know.
Yeah, I do think your lineup can get pretty thin at the bottom of the order, which again, this isn't, I don't know. But if Winn is down there and he's not producing a super high level, and then he's down there with Scott, Walker, and Gorman, like there's a world where that's a really intriguing bottom of the order. There's also a world where that's a pretty brutal bottom of your order. And then the top is like your best bats, which is in theory what you're trying to do. But I wonder if it brings a little bit more balance if you have wins leading off. Anyways, I think if I were making the best possible lineup today, I'm like, I want to win this game. He's not my leadoff hitter. But I think if you're thinking long term, it's that whole thing that Ollie and Mo have talked about this year of like, we got to make some moves that are more about the future than the now. I think that could be a now or a future oriented thing where if that's actually the process behind it, like if they actually believe Winn's their best leadoff hitter and Donovan and Nootbaar aren't, that's weird. But they're doing it because they're like, we want for the sake of the future of this club, we believe batting Mason Winn leadoff now will be the best thing for us going forward. But then I could see that.
Why is that the thing they make thinking about the future? Like there are so many other decisions they could make and think about the future. It's so funny to me. If the Cardinals, like I will tell you right now, I will not believe that's the thought process if Mason Winn's the leadoff hitter. I believe it will be one of two things. A, they think that they went with him last year and they should do it again, or B, it's a marketing thing. That's the only like plausible explanation, because if it's about the future, what is Miles Michaelis doing in the rotation? And what is Steven Matz doing in the rotation? What are we doing? How do we not trade one of these guys? Why is Eric Fetty not in pinstripes? Like there are a lot of questions that the Cardinals have to answer if this is where they will draw the line in terms of thinking about the future. So I can't get on board with that. I'm sorry, but like it is crazy.
Fair point.
Like what a hill to die on for the Cardinals organization, man. Like, who's running the show?
It's not crazy bad. It's not like Mason Winn being your leadoff hitter. It's not like they're putting Victor Scott there. It's a very different thing.
But in the full context of Cardinals thinking and moves this offseason, like it is absurd.
Yeah. I mean, again, I do think there's a world where they could say, hey, having one of Nootbaar and Donovan in the 5-6 as like one more run producing roles, get Winn at the top, and then you have your 2 through 5 or 2 through 6 is strengthened. I could see that as like an argument, but anyways, when you put it like that, it is fair. There's too many things that they're doing that are not in the direction of that. They would say, oh, we're protecting early on arms and all that. And I would just disagree with all that, but it's fine. We've had a conversation plenty of times. We'll probably have it some more. But yeah,
it's all there's to talk about with this team.
It's all there's to talk about. But now at least they gave us a move to talk about today, which is super fun. And then we are under 2 weeks, or no, we're 2 weeks from today, away from opening day. So very excited for some real Cardinal baseball to happen soon. Again, thanks as always for tuning in. This is super fun for those of you who tuned in and gave us some of your thoughts on the roster, Phil Maton signing, all that kind of stuff. Like and subscribe. It helps the channel a ton. Rate the show if you're listening on audio. Share with a friend. Drop a comment down below how you felt the Phil Maton signing. Again, that helps with our videos as well when you let us know. And we like to interact with the comments. So we try to read through all of them. We try to react to them if we can. But we appreciate all of you as always. I don't know. I don't know if we'll be back this weekend or not since we did this emergency pod. We'll see. Maybe I think we're maybe shooting for Monday. But yeah, we'll see some more roster moves probably by then. Guys getting sent down to AAA, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, thanks for tuning in as always, and we'll see you again. Oh yeah, go ahead. Yeah, one more thing.
Over under 0.5 more moves the rest of the offseason, including trades and or signings. Only moves that impact the major league roster though.
0.
Yeah, it's got to be under, right?
Yeah, I'm going under, but I would love if we could do an emergency pod for Eric Fetty to be traded. I know Katie shot it down when Trev brought it up. Shout out to Trevor Rosenthal for listening to the pod and throwing that out there on Cardinals territory. Katie shot it down, but again, this is how the Cardinals have it set up right now. They have Gray, Palante, Michaelis, and Matz in the rotation. You put McGreevy in there. Guess what? You still have Quinn Matthews and Corin Graceffo right behind. And you have Matthew Liberatore. That's 3 backup options right there I can name. Lance Lynn's available. Kyle Gibson's available. You could trade Eric Fetty. You could do it. But they're not going to.
Easily.
So
Sem or Bursa. But whatever.
Sem's at that point. It's like when you get to Sem, then you're like, okay, the season's not a good spot. But
absolutely. But he's there.
You could do it if you had to.
He's real.
So, and it's like, okay, if you're talking about you don't want to rush Tink Hence, I get it. You don't want to get to a place where you have to put Tink Hence out there to go over Cooper Jerby too soon. But I don't think you're putting that Quinn Matthews out there too soon.
It's not like Johan Oviedo.
Yeah, so that's where I just don't buy the argument. I'm not I'm not going to fight people on it, but they could trade Eric Fetty right now. And the fact that he makes $7.5 million is a pro to trading him. It's like you get more value for that. They just spent $2 million on a reliever. They could spend $10 million on they could trade away Fetty and all of his money and sign a guy for $10 million. That's a $3 million increase. They can afford to do it. But whatever. Yeah. So whatever. We'll see. Anyways, it is what it is. It is what it is. The theme of the offseason, it feels like. But we'll be back soon on Deal in the Cards. Thanks for tuning in as always. We appreciate you all. Oh wait, is Lynn for sure headed to the Cubs?
Very.
No, I don't think he is. I think it's just rumored still. Anyway,
I think
it'll happen.
Uniform, but yeah,
it'd be weird. Happen. Gosh, if he like strikes out the Cardinals with the bases loaded and does something at Wrigley, I'll just be that'll be.
Well, then they can sing "Go Cubs Go" and lose 8 straight again. Do you remember? That was the best last year. That made me so happy.
Oh man, I sure hope so. But anyways, thanks for tuning in as always. We'll see you guys next time on Deal in the Cards.
Thanks, Phil.